You turn on a tap, fill a glass, and drink without thinking. No smell test, no checking animal tracks, no asking whether something died upstream, no wondering if one sip could make your stomach twist by nightfall. Clean water feels normal to us because the dangerous work is hidden. Pipes carry it, filters clean it, chemicals treat it, tests check it, rules protect it. Most of the time, we just trust the glass. But for ancient humans, every drink was a decision. Long before faucets, filters, bottled water, or warning signs, a small band might wake at sunrise with one urgent problem. Where can we drink without dying? They were carrying infants, stone tools, tired bodies, and the memory of the last reliable stream. The adults scanned the ground. The children grew quiet. Lips dried. Energy faded. Somewhere ahead, there might be water in a bend of rock, beneath a line of trees, inside a muddy animal trail, or under sand in a dry riverbed. But finding water was only half the problem. The harder question was whether that water would save them or make them sick. Most people imagine ancient humans simply drank from rivers and hoped for the best. But the twist is this: they were not looking for perfectly clean water. They were looking for the least dangerous water they could reach. So, how did ancient humans survive without clean water? The answer was not one magic trick. It was not just boiling. It was not just strong stomachs. It was a whole survival system made from movement, memory, landscape reading, fire, storage, and painful lessons passed from one generation to the next. To us, clean water is almost invisible. It comes from a tap, clear and cold. After passing through systems most of us never see. We think of safety in modern terms: bacteria counts, viruses, sewage contamination, heavy metals, chemical runoff. But prehistoric people did not look at a stream and think of microbes. They had no microscopes, no germ theory, and no laboratory reports. Their world was judged through the senses and through memory. Water had a smell, it had a taste, it had a color, it had movement, temperature, and a place in the story of the land. A pool crowded with flies, animal dung, and rotting flesh was different from a cold spring seeping from shaded stone. A slow, green, stagnant pond was different from a river running over gravel. A damp hollow marked by fresh animal tracks could mean water nearby, but it could also mean competition, predators, or contamination. That sounds obvious now, but imagine making that call while thirsty, hot, and far from the next source. It was not a peaceful nature documentary moment. It was more like choosing the least suspicious food from the back of a fridge during a power outage. Ancient humans drank from rivers, springs, seeps, rain pools, snowmelt, wetlands, and water collected in rock hollows. In some places, they may have cut or chewed water-rich plants, followed dry stream beds to buried moisture, or dug into sand where water lingered below the surface. None of these sources were guaranteed safe, but safety was not a simple yes or no. It was a scale of danger, and ancient survival often came down to reading that scale better than the next person. Mobility itself was one of the oldest water technologies. Long before wells and reservoirs, people survived by moving with water. Hunter-gatherer groups followed seasonal rains, returned to known springs, camped near lake shores and rivers, and avoided routes where dry months lasted too long. The map in their minds was not just a map of food. It was a map of thirst. Where does water remain after the rains stop? Which river shrinks but does not vanish? Which basin holds pools in a drought? Which route can children and elders survive? Archaeology gives us hints of this pattern again and again. Ancient camps and tool scatters are often found near former lakes, river terraces, wetlands, and springs. These places offered plants, animals, stone, and shelter. But above all, they offered the one resource no human body can go without for long. Food matters deeply, but a starving person may endure for weeks. Without water, danger arrives in days, sometimes faster in heat, especially for children, pregnant women, the injured, and the old. And we should not romanticize this. Ancient people almost certainly suffered from contaminated water. Parasites, diarrheal disease, animal waste, decaying organic matter, and waterborne pathogens would have been real threats. Some drinking choices ended badly. Some camps may have become unhealthy because waste and water were too close together. Some groups must have learned, through painful experience, that certain pools caused sickness, or that water downstream from dead animals was dangerous, or that a beautiful still surface could hide invisible harm. But survival in prehistory did not require eliminating every risk. It required reducing risk often enough for the group to continue. Enough people had to choose well, often enough, for children to grow, elders to teach, and knowledge to pass forward. The question was not, is this water scientifically clean? The question was, is this the best water we can reach before thirst weakens us? That is the ancient problem at the heart of this story. If humans could not test water, bottle it, sterilize it, or pipe it safely into camp, what did they do? What habits, instincts, observations, and shared rules helped them avoid the worst dangers? To understand that, we have to step into the ancient landscape and learn the signs they were reading. Imagine standing at the edge of an ancient valley at sunrise, with no map in your hand and no road leading anywhere. To modern eyes, the land might look empty, but to people who lived there, it was crowded with information. A darker line of trees could mean moisture beneath the soil. A trail of animal tracks could point toward a drinking place. The sound of insects, the smell of mud, the shape of stones in a dry stream bed, all of it mattered. Ancient humans were not wandering randomly from one puddle to the next. They were reading the landscape like a survival map. When they had a choice, they probably favored moving water over still water, not because they understood bacteria, viruses, parasites, or the chemistry of contamination, but because flowing water gave clues the senses could understand. A stream tumbling over stones looked brighter. It smelled less rotten. It was cooler to the touch. It did not have the same heavy skin of algae or decay that could gather on a stagnant pool where animals waded, defecated, died, and decomposed. Of course, flowing water was not automatically safe. A clear stream could still carry parasites or waste from something dead upstream. The ancient world did not come with a 5-star hygiene rating floating above the river. But, compared with a warm, motionless pool crowded with insect larvae and animal dung, moving water often reduced some risks. It diluted. It carried away. It changed more often. For a thirsty group trying to make the best possible decision without laboratory knowledge, that difference could matter. Springs and seeps may have been even more valuable. Groundwater rising out of rock, sand, or gravel could appear clear and cold even in dry country. Sometimes, it had passed through layers of sediment that filtered out visible debris. A spring tucked beneath a cliff, a damp patch at the base of a slope, a trickle emerging from gravel after rain had vanished elsewhere. These places could become precious beyond measure, and people would remember them, not as dots on a paper map, but as stories, routes, names, warnings, and habits. A grandmother might know that beyond a ridge, where certain shrubs grow, there is a seep that still wets the stones late in the dry season. A hunter might know that a spring tastes bitter after floods but clears again days later. Children walking with adults would learn not only where water was, but when it could be trusted, when it failed, and what signs meant trouble. Those signs were everywhere, if you knew how to notice them. A dead animal near the edge of a pool was a warning. A foul smell was a warning. Water with strange color, an oily surface, heavy scum, or clouds of larvae could signal decay or contamination. Saltiness might make water useless for real relief. Bitterness could mark minerals or plant compounds that the body rejected. Animal dung upstream, trampled mud, vultures circling, or memories of people becoming sick after drinking from a certain place. All of these formed a kind of practical knowledge. It was imperfect. It could not reveal every invisible pathogen. A beautiful spring could still be dangerous. A muddy pool could sometimes be survived. But ancient decision-making was not about certainty. It was about stacking small advantages, one observation at a time. Animal behavior also mattered, though not in the simple way people often imagine. Humans may have watched birds, grazing animals, or other primates to find water, especially in unfamiliar terrain. If many creatures moved toward a hidden hollow at dusk, there might be a water hole there. If green vegetation clustered where the rest of the land was dry, roots might be tapping moisture. But animals drinking from a place did not prove it was safe for humans. Some animals tolerate pathogens that make us ill. Others may drink from desperate sources because they have no better option. A thirsty antelope is not a certified water inspector. The deeper skill was pattern recognition across time. Which pools lasted longest into drought? Which waterholes drew predators after dark? Which spring stayed cool when the river turned muddy? Which place had made people vomit, cramp, or weaken on previous journeys? Survival knowledge was not a single observation. It was a memory system. Archaeology can rarely show us someone making these choices moment by moment. But ethnographic evidence from modern hunter-gatherer and pastoral communities gives us a careful window. Many such groups hold extraordinarily detailed knowledge of seasonal water, hidden water, emergency water, and the paths between them. They know where to dig in dry riverbeds, which plants hint at shallow groundwater, and which sources are reliable only at certain times of year. We should not assume prehistoric people were identical to any living group, but the logic is strong. Mobile humans who depended on landscapes had to know those landscapes deeply. In that sense, ancient water safety began long before anyone lifted a handful to drink. It began with memory, smell, movement, caution, and inherited experience. It began with people learning that the land was not silent. It was speaking all the time, but choosing better water was only part of the answer, because sometimes the only water available still looked dangerous. And this is where fire changes the story. Not in the simple way we sometimes imagine, with every prehistoric family neatly boiling water before dinner, like campers around a modern stove. The truth was more complicated and more interesting. Fire was one of the great turning points in human survival, but boiling water was not automatic. To boil water regularly, you need fuel, you need time, you need a container that can survive heat, you need a habit, a reason, a tradition that says, this is worth doing. Humans controlled fire long before they made pottery. For hundreds of thousands of years, fire gave warmth, protection, light, cooked food, and smoke that could drive away insects. It transformed the night. It transformed meat, roots, and seeds. But without clay pots or metal vessels, putting water over a flame was not so easy. A skin bag would burn. A wooden bowl could scorch. A bark container might fail if handled carelessly. Basically, you could not just put your prehistoric water bottle on a burner and call it a day. So, if ancient people heated water, they often had to do it indirectly. One possible method was stone boiling. Stones could be heated in a fire until they were extremely hot, then dropped into water held in a hide-lined pit, a wooden vessel, a bark container, or an animal skin bag supported away from the flames. The stones released their heat into the water. Add enough hot stones, and the temperature could rise dramatically, even to boiling. Archaeologists and experimental researchers have shown that this kind of technique can work, and versions of it were used by many traditional societies around the world. It was not effortless. Stones had to be chosen carefully, because some crack or explode when heated. Containers had to be made, maintained, and protected. Fuel had to be gathered. But it shows something important. Long before modern cookware, humans were not helpless. They were inventive with the materials around them. Later, when pottery appeared in different parts of the world, boiling became much more practical. Ceramic vessels could sit near or over fire. They could hold water, broth, plants, grains, and bones. For more settled or semi-settled communities, where people stayed near hearths and storage places, heating water may have become easier to repeat as a daily habit. Boiling can kill many disease-causing organisms, though not every toxin or contaminant. It is powerful, but it is not magic. And in deep prehistory, it was probably one tool among many, not a universal rule. There were also quieter technologies, so ordinary we might barely call them technologies at all. Muddy water can be left to stand. Given time, heavier sediment sinks, and clearer water can be scooped from the top. Water can be strained through woven fibers, grasses, plant material, cloth-like textiles, sand, or charcoal. People could dig shallow holes near riverbanks and let water seep through layers of sand before collecting it. This kind of bank filtration can improve clarity and sometimes reduce some contaminants. Charcoal can absorb certain impurities. Sand can trap particles. Fibers can remove floating debris. But again, we have to be careful. Clear water is not always safe water. A stream that looks pure can carry invisible parasites. Water filtered through sand is not guaranteed free of microbes. Ancient methods could reduce risk, not eliminate it. Survival was often about lowering the odds of harm, not achieving perfect safety. Then there was storage, one of the most important and most dangerous water technologies. To move away from a river or spring, people needed to carry water with them. Gourds could become bottles. Ostrich eggshells, found archaeologically in parts of Africa, could be used as durable containers. Animal stomachs and skins could hold liquid. Baskets could be sealed with resin or pitch. Later, ceramic jars made it possible to store larger amounts near camps, houses, or fields. This changed movement. A person with a container could cross a dry stretch. A group could camp farther from a source. A mother could keep water near children. Hunters could travel longer. Storage stretched the landscape. But stored water could turn against you. A dirty container could contaminate fresh water. Warmth could encourage growth. Hands, insects, dust, and old residue could all make a vessel dangerous. So the technology was never just the object. It was the behavior around it. Cover the vessel. Keep it off the ground. Use a particular container only for water. Drink it before it sits too long. Rinse it when possible. Avoid dipping filthy hands into the supply. None of this required germ theory. No one needed to see bacteria under a microscope to notice patterns. A child could learn by watching. This seep is better than that pool. Let the mud settle first. Strain it through this. Warm it near the fire. Do not drink from the place where animals churn the bank. Do not use the old skin if it smells wrong. What looks simple from a distance was really accumulated intelligence, passed from hand to hand, season to season, generation to generation. Still, even with skill and technology, ancient water was never completely safe, and the human body had to live with that constant biological pressure. We should not imagine the past as a world of perfectly natural streams and healthy people drinking freely from untouched wilderness. Ancient humans got sick. They swallowed parasites. They suffered from diarrhea, stomach infections, fever, weakness, and dehydration. For a strong adult, a bad few days might mean falling behind the group, losing the strength to hunt, gather, or carry a child. For infants, elders, pregnant women, or anyone already weakened by hunger, the same illness could be fatal. This is one of the hardest truths about survival before sanitation. People did not survive because the world was gentle. They survived unevenly. Some recovered. Some did not. Many deaths that would now be prevented by clean water systems, sewage treatment, and basic rehydration may have once been accepted as part of the dangerous rhythm of life. And the danger changed as humans changed the way they lived. For small, mobile bands, water could be risky, but the risk was often spread across the landscape. A group might stay near a spring, a river bend, or a seasonal wetland for a time, then move on. Their waste did not build up endlessly in one place. Their animals, if they had none yet, were not crowded beside them in pens. Their camps were temporary, and that mobility could act almost like a form of sanitation. But with farming villages and later towns and early cities, the water problem became more intense. More people meant more waste. Domesticated animals brought manure, parasites, and new disease pathways. Wells, ditches, ponds, storage jars, and irrigation channels made life possible in one way, while creating new chances for contamination in another. Civilization brought grain stores, walls, roads, and water infrastructure, but it also pulled humans, animals, garbage, and drinking water into tighter contact than ever before. In other words, settling down solved some problems and invited new ones to move in next door. So survival depended on a mixture of biology and behavior. Repeated exposure to local microbes may have shaped immune responses over time, and people who survived childhood illnesses could carry some resilience into adulthood. But this was not magical immunity. Ancient bodies were not immune to dirty water. They were vulnerable bodies, learning inside dangerous places. The stronger protection came from habits. Move camp when the place begins to smell wrong. Keep waste away from the water when possible. Prefer running water over stagnant pools. Remember which springs stayed clear after the rains. Use fire when you can. Avoid floodwater that is swept through animal trails, rotting plants, and old campsites. Watch who gets sick, and remember what they drank. In this way, memory became as important as muscle. The oldest people in a group were not just survivors. They were living maps of danger. They could remember the dry year when one pool turned bitter, the season when children fell ill after drinking downstream, the spring that never failed, the marsh that looked inviting but brought fever. Long before written science, this knowledge could be carried in ordinary speech, in warnings, in customs, in stories told at night. Culture itself became a survival technology. A taboo against drinking from a certain pool might sound spiritual, but it could also preserve a memory of sickness. A sacred spring might be sacred because, for generations, it saved people when other sources failed. A rule about where to camp could separate sleeping bodies from runoff and waste. A seasonal route might lead a band not simply toward food, but toward safer water at exactly the right time of year. A story about a cursed place may have been more than superstition. It may have been public health in mythic form. And this brings us back to the beginning. A band moving at sunrise, thirsty, tired, scanning the land for signs. They do not reach the shaded seep or the flowing stream because the water is pure. It is not pure in the modern sense. It may still hold microbes, silt, insects, or the invisible traces of animals that passed there before dawn. But they choose it because people before them learned. They learned through sickness, through grief, through recovery, through observation repeated over lifetimes. They learned that a moving stream was often better than a warm, stagnant pool, that water near shade might last longer, that fire could make danger smaller, that the memory of elders mattered, that leaving a place could be as life-saving as finding one. Their achievement was not conquering nature. It was negotiating with it every single day. Today, when we turn a tap or lift a clear glass to our mouths, we are living at the far end of an ancient chain of lessons. Beneath modern pipes, filters, chlorine, wells, reservoirs, and laboratories are older instincts. Look carefully. Remember what happened. Keep filth away from water. Use heat. Move when the place becomes dangerous. Trust the landscape, but never completely. Ancient humans survived without clean water, not because their water was pure, and not because their bodies were magically stronger than ours. They survived because culture, observation, mobility, and fire turned a dangerous world into something barely manageable. Not safe, not clean, but survivable.